Hello and welcome back to the Be More Connected Summit. Today, I'm here with Dana Balicki, who is a transformational coach and modern mystic committed to helping you get clear on your truth and learning to trust yourself enough to live it. She helps ever-evolving souls looking for clarity, confidence, and courage so they can live a life of purpose and deep connection. So Dana, thank you so much for being here today. And I'm super excited to dive into our conversation and learn more about the work that you're doing in the world. And so I love to start by asking our guests a bit about their journey of healing and what's gotten them to where they are today.
Yeah, totally. My journey is maybe some folks, can find themselves somewhere along it or not relate at all. And I really believe that all of us have a right to our own journey. Because I spent a long time as a grassroots activist. So during the anti-war years, like all through my 20s, all through the oddies, I was an organizer and activist for a radical grassroots feminist organization. And that was the work that I was like, I am here on the planet to do it, and we were out in the streets in the halls of Congress, and I got burnt out. I mean, like many of us experience doing maybe work we love, maybe work we don't love. But when we're, really putting our all into something, like it's easy, it can be easy, especially the way our culture is designed, to just like fizzle out and burn out and like forget ourselves. And so I had a burnout time in my late 20s that coincided quite synchronistically with my Saturn return. If anyone, hears familiar with that, intense astrological transit, around age 28, 29. And I had a psychic crisis, and I needed support. I asked the universe, like, help, please. And I asked really specifically for a community of women, which was funny because I already worked with a group, for a women's organization. I'm like, but not them. I need another group of women, like more my age, and to do some deep spiritual work, though I don't know if I even would have called it spiritual work at the time. And I found a group of women, and I learned how to slow down. I learned how to look inside. I learned how to see and hear myself, and honor my truth, and really like develop a relationship with myself that I didn't have at that point. And that turned into leaving my job. It took a little while. Like I still stayed with my work for another year or two until I was like, okay, I'm ready. And and that was where I really like learned as a student the work that I now teach. So years after I left my job and was out there freelancing, doing still political work and organizing work, it was really about, I was getting like hired by folks, and then I'd get like pulled into like literally like broom closets, right? Like little janitorial closets by folks, and they would just like be crying and like they'd want to talk to me. And it was all just based on personal conversations that we'd had. And I was like, oh, I think this is what I'm here to do now, beyond just the organizing. And the political work is like this level of like personal work. And I really wanted to support change makers because I was watching us all burn out, and that was the way the system was designed, right? We've talked about this a little bit, like the system is designed and for like a churn and burn, and there's a lot of us that get caught in it. And we can't really be, my sense was we can't, and still is, like we can't really like bring the change that we hope to bring when we don't know what it feels like in our bodies, and when we are too burnt out, like we don't know how to listen to ourselves, right? We don't know how to connect with spirit or whatever, the divine, whatever that means for any of us. So that was how I got called, and I went to my teachers and learned from them. My teacher, Raw Goddess, and then her teachers, among many, right? I have many now, but Gail Straub and David Gershon, and of the Empowerment Institute, and went and trained with them for a year. and then started my practice. And this was in 2011. So this was also around Occupy Wall Street time, which I got really involved in, but I didn't burn out. I saw everyone else doing it. And that's how I was like, oh, I'm so committed to like, you know, to supporting change makers. So yeah, fast forward, you know, nearly a decade and here I am, you know, doing the work, and I still work with a lot of change makers, but I work with just a lot of amazing humans. And um, you know, so we'll talk more about it, but that's sort of like what got me into like this part of the role, which I really view as a form of my activism.
Yes. And I so appreciate you sharing your journey and sharing your story. And I think a lot of members of this audience can definitely relate to that experience of feeling so passionate about being in the center of connecting community and being able to make a big difference in the world, but not necessarily having the time and the tools and the resources to be able to also take care of themselves in that process. And I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into some of the practices that have been most supportive for you. And I heard you speaking a bit about really taking time to slow down and being able to understand and connect in with the messages that you're receiving from your body and from your intuition. And if you could speak a bit to how that shows up in your life and how that's been able to be supportive of your growth and development.
Yeah, I remember. I'm remembering this moment when my teacher, you know, this was back like I was like 20, 28, 29, and or somewhere really early on, and she was like, she started talking about being grounded. And I was like, you know, I've heard people talk about being grounded, but like I don't know what it means. I didn't
Sure.
know what it I didn't know what it meant. And like, not that like I didn't understand like some sort of like energetic aspect. It was like I really was just like, I don't when we say the word grounded and I think about like the connotations of like someone who's grounded, I was like, you know, like, well, maybe I feel like I'm aware of things like happening in the world, so maybe that's grounded. That was like kind of what I saw as grounded. Like, no, I'm paying attention. And it was like, no, I was so all over the place. I was just like a swirl. I have a lot of air in my chart. If that means anything to anyone, right? It's like I can be very like up here, you know, and like in the realm of like ideas, and I mean that's still what I do, is like everything that I do is like kind of in the realm of like ideas and feelings, and so it can be very ethereal. And so I've had to practice grounding. So like, you know, there's and slowing down, right? So these are like these kind of key parts of my life that I can, you know, key teachings of my life that I could talk for hours and hours and hours and forever, and I do, and that's really what I talk about all the time. But the grounding, you know, was just really understanding like how out of my body I was, right? And that came from stress, that came from like not even just like eating enough food, you know, to like over caffeinating, not sleeping well, right? So there were just all these ways that I was like just always out of my body and out in the externally, right? Which happens a lot, I think, also with like those of us who are like doing like change related work, right? Where we're just like out there. And it was like a process of like, what does it mean to come back to my body? What does it mean to start to like put my feet on the ground and to breathe, right? And now I have a very strong practice of like energetically anchoring like down to the center of the planet, right? And using that energy, you know, to like then channel up through my body. And I'll share, you know, I can share a little bit more about that later, but so grounding is as an energetic practice is like something I do daily and have for like a decade now. And one of the most just like simple, deceptively simple practices that has helped me like come back to my body. Of course, like learning how to listen to my body and eating food and eating the food that's right for me. And and sleep and really prioritizing rest. And so all of that also came from this bigger picture of like slowing down to like, I needed to learn how to see and hear myself again. And we can't do that when we're going a million miles an hour, right? I always use this analogy of like a speeding train. If you've ever been on like a speeding train and you're just seeing things like whip by outside the window, right? Like that's how we sort of like move through our lives. We're like, okay, this and this and this and this. And you can't see what's important when it's like spinning by, right? Like you literally have to slow down. And that's when you see like, oh, right, that like little charming house or that little park or whatever. It's like you can see things when we slow down. We cannot see them when we're going fast. We cannot have clarity for our lives and for the world when we're in that churn and burn, when we're in that like million miles an hour. So the slowing down was something that I think came on, was originally part of the work that I did back, in my late 20s, because my teachers, I remember this exercise we did that was, we had to look at our relationships. And there were 17 of us, young women, artists, activists from around the country that came together to this year-long program together. It was called We Got Issues. It doesn't exist anymore, but we had to look at all our relationships and we had to map them. And all of us, of course, were just crying because we were all burnt out. We were all just like, oh, our relationships, oh, they're so, it was just like we hadn't tended to them. And of course, everything we did just made us all cry. But it was like that level of like, let me slow down. Like, let me literally sit down with a piece of paper and look at the quality of my relationships. You know what I mean? So it was like I could keep moving and be like, yeah, I've got good friends. I'm fine. Like, oh yeah, me and my parents were great. Me and my partner are wonderful. Yeah, we're just doing it. But I mean, like I actually, it's like, so starting to slow down in all of these ways, right? And that was like through a structured program, right? So that was like structured work that I was like, looking at these aspects of my life, but it became, really just part of the everyday of like starting to observe myself, starting to observe my thoughts, observe my feelings and be like, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? So what is this pattern I'm stuck in? So it's like the slow down medicine is vast. And towards maybe about 7 years ago, I was living in New York and I was like, I can't slow down in New York. I don't know how. I'm trying and I can't do it. And my partner and I were traveling a lot and I was like, we're spending too much money trying to make it in New York when we really don't want to be here anymore. And so that was when we decided to, start to think about a new place to live. And then 5 years ago, we came out to the desert, Joshua Tree, California. And I had never been here. We didn't know anyone who had been here. We came out for just a short vacation, and then we were like, I think this is it. This is what we've been calling in. But it was a slowed down life. And then we got here, and I thought like, oh, great. Now I'm in the desert. Now I'm really going to get to slow down. But I realized how much of it was inside of me, right? Like the busyness lives in here and not out here. 100%. Right? Like we've internalized it, right? We internalize all the busyness. We internalize all the imperialism and patriarchy. And, it's like it's all internalized. And that's really where the work is like the internal deprogramming. And so that slow down medicine, like started and it never stops and it's constant. And yeah, every day.
And that is such powerful work. And I hadn't heard it phrased that way before as slow down medicine. And I feel like we are all getting a bit of a crash course in.
Oh my God, we're all welcome, everyone.
Right now, yes.
I feel like I've been on a little island, kind of like a little slow down island for like 5 years now. And so I feel like I've been training and everyone just like crash landed on the island. And so, of course, then because I still have the busyness inside of me, the programming, I'm like, oh, let me help, let me be busy. All of a sudden, helping people slow down. It's like, whoa, that's not it, right? So I got to still embody the slow down medicine, but I welcome you all here. It's a rough transition, but you're gonna make it.
Yes, and I think that it's so important for us to really be sinking into this time, because I've been hearing a lot of discussion about getting back to normal and really having this seeking or this aspiration for things to return to the way that they were. And I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts about that and how we can actually use this as an opportunity for us to create something new, and to be able to lean into a way of being where slowing down doesn't feel so uncomfortable and so foreign to us.
I don't think there's I don't think there's a norm. I mean, first of all, I don't believe in normal, but I understand the desire, right? And I've thought it myself, like, oh, can't wait till things get back to normal, right? And like, of course, certain things will, like stores will open back up. We will be able to leave our houses without like sanitizing the whole, like I'm relatively certain that there will be certain things that like go back to some semblance of like what we were used to. And I think all of us are going to be changed by this experience, right? So I think there's an opportunity, instead of being like, let me go back to something, like, I am changed by this experience. You are changed by this experience. We are collectively changed by this experience. So what's next? Right? Like, what's the new normal? What's the new experience that we want to create? Right? So I deeply believe in our creative potential as humans. And like, that's why we're here. Right? When people are like, why are we here? I'm like, well, I think I feel like I have a sense of why we're here. Like, we're here to create our reality. Right? We're here to like be alive and to like use the capacities that we have to like translate our ideas into reality. And I don't think we need to be boxed in by what was normal, because you know what? I think part of what we're going to see and what we are already seeing in our own individual lives and then collectively is like how much things didn't work.
Yes.
Right? Like, we're globally, like, a lot of us are staying home, yes, to protect those who, who are more vulnerable, right? Vulnerable communities that could be more easily affected, by this pandemic. And we're also doing it because the systems were not created to support this kind of situation, right? And we can kind of give it a pass and be like, well, this is the first time. But we also know that the medical system does not work.
Right.
Right? It doesn't work for anyone, right? We know like the nonprofit system, right? Which was like created to be like this bond between like, like to fill in the gap between like government and the people. And like, it's not working either, right? Our education system isn't working. Like the justice system, we know, does not work, right? Like there are so many systems that we've all been trained to sort of like cling on to. And it's part of our social agreement, but it's not working, right? Like there's a great piece in The Guardian today by a woman I knew from Occupy named Aster Taylor, all about absolving student debt, and it's like, so it's like these systems that we are a part of are not working. So why do we want to go back to them, right? Like, how many folks here like watching have experienced like burnout because they like had to keep going, right? And like had to keep like showing up in ways that like to just make ends meet, right? So I think there's an opportunity for us to like reimagine, right? Like how we really want to experience our lives. And I'm not saying that we get to just be like, poof, like now I have all of the things that I want, and like, and we're disregarding reality. But like, let's create something better together that really serves, like supports and helps and nourishes way more people, right? So I'm like, I'm over the idea of going back to normal, because I don't think I think we can be really radically honest with ourselves, and probably don't even have to like work too hard to do that like the old systems failed a lot of folks. And like, I'm like, I definitely like acknowledging, like, I am a white woman, came from a middle class family, like work for myself, like I am in a great place of privilege. And so, and I don't think that everyone needs to like have a life like mine, right? Like we're all going to have our own, right? Everyone has a right to their own journey. But I think if we can all see how much the systems have been designed not to serve us, and we can, instead of going back and trying to cling on to the past, create something together, um, and reimagine capitalism, reimagine our economy, reimagine the way that we do business together, really reimagine how we calculate and understand value. I mean, there's so much here for us, and I think this is, apocalypse. The Greek root of the word apocalypse is an unveiling, right? It's not fire and brimstone, right? That's like some puritanical biblical business, right? Where like there's an unveiling, there's a revealing here, and I think we should be curious about it.
And I so feel that that piece about reimagining is the space that we're stepping into. And it does feel like this powerful unveiling, this huge opportunity for awakening. And there's many people who this isn't necessarily a big wake up call to. Like they've been pretty aware every single day that these systems are not designed to support them, and that it's been centuries of building up and propagating systems and structures that are designed to support some and not others. But I think that it is really important that on a global level, it's becoming something that we have to confront. And it's becoming so present and so pervasive and in our face that we can't ignore it anymore. It's been time, but now it's just becoming so much more, so much more urgent for us to do that work of reimagining and redefining how we want to live together on this planet. And I loved the way that you were describing creating systems and structures that are more nourishing for everyone and that serve all, because that is possible. And I think that when we are stuck in that pace that you were talking about before of moving so quickly, we can't actually see what's important. We can't have that clarity and that sight to be able to actually see that there are other potentials, that there are other worlds, that there's other futures that could exist.
Totally. And I think that, like you said, like there are a lot of folks, a lot of communities who have known for a very long time that the systems were not that designed to support them. And those are the, those are the folks, Black women, communities of color, like I like, we must follow their lead, right? Like I, as a white person, like I'm not here to be like, here's my paradigm, come into, like, I don't need to recreate anything. I don't need to lead anything, right? Like I can show up in my own community, in my own way as like, my own version of, leadership that like, I really hope to bring a great deal of like compassion to, but also like, I want to follow the lead, right? Like of the communities who have seen the brokenness of the systems for a long time, right? Like we're not broken, right? We're told that we're broken. We are not broken. The systems are broken, right? And like, this is good news in that like, we don't have to fix ourselves, right? Like, yes, I'm a coach and I work I do transformational work, but not because anyone's broken, right? It's just like, how do we listen to ourselves, right? And like, how do we also, when we can listen to ourselves and we can honor our own truths, like this is part of building our capacity to understand that like other people's truths are valid, right? And I think that's part of supremacy, is that like when like we, and I'll say we as like, I'll represent white people here, right? It's like, as white people, right, we're like, well, this is our truth and our truth is the norm, which is part of my thing about like, why go back to normal? Because it's just, it's just what normalcy as like part of white supremacy. Like, why do we want to go back to that? It doesn't actually serve the the oppressed or the oppressors, right? And so then here we are, like having the opportunity to really look at that, and like we as white people are talking to anyone, any of my siblings out there, it's like we have the responsibility now to like to do the work, right? To like to look at our privilege and to like peel the layers back here and do our work, and to like follow the lead of folks who have been like doing this work for a long time, At least that's how I feel, and that's what I hope this, like what this time opens, continues to open for us, and that like, we can all step forward together.
Yes, and I think it is such deep, multi-layered work that needs to be happening and is happening at this time, where we're doing a lot of internal work and internal healing, so that then we can show up in the world in a way where we can actually be part of collective action and collective change. And I love the way that you were speaking about leadership and being able to actually create an opportunity for people to become more aware of their own privilege and their own position within society, so that then it allows the space for people who have been much closer to harm, who have been much closer to this understanding of how disruptive and how oppressive these systems have been, to be able to be in the leadership position around reimagining what's next. And I think that that requires a big shift in the way that most people on the planet are understanding how to take these next steps forward.
This time right now is like such an uncomfortable, painful spotlight, right? On all, on all the systems, but like all our internal structures, right? And like the ways that we've been relating to ourselves, right? Even like those of us who are like, wait, I want to go back to normal. It's like, really? Let's take a moment. Let's take a pause, sacred pause here, and look at like if what we really had and what we had defined for ourselves as like as a life that we wanted to live, right? And as a good life. And so I think, what I try to do out in the world is to sort of, one of my teachers, Marguerite Rigoglioso, she talked about it as the gospel of slow down, right? So, now I am having to talk about it a little differently, and that's an interesting exploration, because like some folks are really slowed down, right? But like also with that outer edge of like fear and anxiety and a pandemic, right? Where there's a lot of loss and grief, right? So, and being, the gospel of slow down, right? The reason that we do it, and it'll come in a lot of different ways, because I told you it's medicine, right? Is to like just learn how to like hear, like give ourselves space to like feel our feelings, to and without judgment, right? And without attachment, right? So it's like without judgment or attachment, to like have our like recognize and observe our own thought patterns without judgment, right? Without attachment, without having to go into like, well, this is really the story that I'm telling myself about myself because I'm having this feeling or this thought, right? So it's like, it's such like what I teach is like so internal, right? But it's something that you have opportunities to practice like 1,000, 100,000 times a day. Um, and and so like that's really this space, you know, like I talk about it through the gospel of slow down and like grounding meditation, and a lot through like conversations around clarity, like helping folks like get clear on like what is it that you want, because a lot of us, we're moving fast because we've been taught that like that's the way to do it. And we also know that like I'm moving so fast, most of us are like, I need to slow down. And so we have this pandemic now, or whenever folks are watching this, that's what's happening in the world, right? um, and it's like, so that slow down medicine is a little different for some because of what's happening out in the world and the grief and the loss that's there, and that is opening us up to like, you know, to our emotions perhaps in a new way. That's the opportunity and the challenge. And then there's like, you know, like all my friends and my clients who have kids and who are now trying to like maybe still working from home and have no childcare. And it's like they're like, there's no such thing as slow down. What's that? You know? So it's like but slow down also can be like in the mind, right? It's like it can be very internal. It's quality, not quantity, right? It's not finding an hour a day, because that may not be possible for some, right? And some folks might have 10 hours a day, but like are still busy spinning. So anyway, I'm sort of like, you know, poking at a bunch of little things around here, but I think, you know, the very basic is like what I keep saying right now is like, it's okay to be okay. It's okay to not be okay. Can you just tune into how you're feeling right now and to not judge it and to not attach to it, right? And if you do attach to it, to not judge the attachment, right? Like this is like how we learn to work with ourselves, our emotional body, our mental body, like more skillfully, right? Is to just attend to it, to just pay attention, right? And to like and to hear ourselves and see ourselves, because who doesn't want to be heard or seen in the world, right? Like we want to be heard and seen for who we are. And so there's that part of it, like and that's part of what I teach in the world is like, you know, and I stand on the shoulders, as I've mentioned, many of, you know, a handful of my teachers, but like, you know, this is work that is centuries old, right? This is like why like Buddha sat in meditation, not to like jump ship, right? Jump the earth ship. It's to like make space to like allow what comes up, right? To allow our experience, our thoughts and our feelings to come up and to like let them move, to let them come up without attaching, right? Without having to make it mean something about us, right? To like let it just be part of the experience of being alive. And so there's that part. And then there's like a more practical part, not more practical, but I feel like folks are always like, okay, fine. Yeah, Dana, I can slow down. But like, what am I doing in the world? Like, how am I finding meaning? How am I being purposeful, right? Or how am I just being happy? And I think there's a level of work that's emerged for me out of the slowdown that's about clarity. How do we find clarity? And like, how do we find what's important to us, right? So it's all woven together. I hope this is all sort of making sense, my little tapestry here. You know, but there's, we can find, you know, it's like, we can discover and tune into like what's most important to us without becoming some sort of Buddha who sits under a tree all day long meditating. Like that's not realistic. That's not where we all need to go. You know, like, but we can start to become attentive to our thoughts, to our feelings, right? To like how we're moving through the world. And that's going to create a safe like space, right? For more stuff to come up, but for us to see what's really important. So it's really just like this kind of like ongoing process. The slow down medicine, you know, is the thing that tends to the root. You know, it's like once we start to slow down, even in the tiniest little bits of our lives, that's when we start to make space for for what's most important. And then we can start to work with that. Like as the information starts to come up, we can get better at working with it, right? Whether it's your emotions, like tons of anger, or just like fear, or a deep desire to like, help the other, members of our human family. Like we can work with it, but we can't work with it if we can't see it, right? And if we can't really, like, if we don't know how to trust ourselves. Does that make sense? Sort of all those pieces together? I'm not sure if that totally answered your question there, but.
It does. It makes so much sense. And I think that it's so essential for us to be getting really curious and asking ourselves those deep, deep questions.
Yeah.
And once we do that, then we have the space in our hearts and in our minds to do that reimagining work that was part of your invitation towards the beginning. And I think that that's so powerful.
Yeah, I love the idea of curiosity, like, so much. Like, if there's one thing that I hope I always am, right, is to just be curious. And, some of that got trained out of me, I feel like, in my organizing work, because I felt like skepticism and cynicism came in so hard. So I was like, look at all these broken ass systems, like, and it was so hard to like find curiosity, because it was like, why be curious? Everything's broken. It's not working, like, and here I am, like, having the privilege to be able to like look at it and like benefit from it. So it was like, I didn't like the curiosity, I felt like was sucked out of me, and I think that if anything, like, it's one of the most, like, curiosity, willingness, or some of the most important essences that we can, aspects of ourselves perhaps that we can draw on at this time, right? Like what we were talking about back, back to normal. It's like, if we really take a pause, like, most of us are going to see that like that normal wasn't working, and if it was working for us, chances are it wasn't working for a lot of other folks. And so, like, let's be curious. Like, how do I, what I ask all my clients and myself is like, what do I really want this life experience to be? What do I really want to feel? How do I want to feel as I move through the world? Not what do I want to do or have? I can answer those, right? And those are going to change what I want to do or have. But like, how I want to feel, like, when we can like ask that question and like answer it for ourselves, like, that's power. That's personal power. And then to be able to trust, like, okay, that is how I want to feel. That is the experience I want to have. Because whatever we want to, whatever we want to do or have is because we want a feeling experience, and a lot of times those experiences are extensions from our parents, right? From what we've been programmed, from what is like the thing that we're supposed to want, right? The way we're supposed to be. And that can be informed through generational trauma. That can be informed through trauma, undone karma, past lives, right? From ancestral trauma to like trauma transferred epigenetically. And so it's really important for us to like do the inner work, to like tend to like our own journeys, right? To tend to our trauma, our trauma responses, to see how it's still kicking up on every day, be loving and gentle and compassionate with ourselves, and give ourselves space to like be curious about what we want and what we want to create. Sorry, that's just my tangent on curiosity.
But I think that piece about not just focusing on what we want to do and what we want to have, but focusing on how we want to feel, is such an important invitation. And just generally in our culture, it's not something that we're often encouraged to think about or prioritize or center our time and our priorities around. And I think that that's so important to presence right now.
Yeah.
And I love to ask each of our guests what being more connected means to you.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I've probably, said it in all these different ways, already. So all that, because I mean, everything, the reason that I feel like I'm here on the planet is to help us see how we belong to each other. So everything that I do, doesn't mean I'm always going to get it right. I'm going to fall down on my face a whole lot and get it wrong a whole lot, right? Which I accept about my journey. Is around connection. And, and I believe that my personal journey, led me outward towards like, let me connect with the whole world and support and lift up the world and not myself, right? My girlfriends and I call it punk damage, which it was like, yeah, no, it is wrong to look at yourself. Like you got to it is wrong to like want any sort of abundance in your life, like suffer, and it was like, oh yeah, that led to burnout, right? So it's like that connection is like, I really believe is here, and not just like navel gazing, right? Not just like increased self-awareness, right? It's like all the practices I talked about of like compassion and release of judgment and learning how to trust ourselves, so that we can trust each other. Right? So that we can, so that I can trust that like what my experience has been is not the only, is not the pinnacle of like how things should be, right? So it's like, I have to trust you, I have to trust me, right? Like that, I think, is something that's been broken so much. It's like we don't trust our systems because they were built on a foundation of imperialism that was like very, well crafted to like support some and not others. And so that's the responsibility I feel like we have. And even with our own inner work, to know that our own inner work is in service of collective rising, so yeah, so that's like the big picture, and then doing there's, we'll talk about in a sec, but like, some ways to really like connect inward with yourself, so that you can, it's like, so you can do what you're here to do on the planet, and then we can do this together, and we can find each other and connect and collaborate and build and reimagine and revision,
Yes, learning how to trust ourselves so we can trust each other.
Yeah.
Such an important message for this time.
Yeah.
And you have a free gift for our audience. I'd love if you could share about it.
And the free gift here is a meditation, guided meditation, that I've led in several live workshops, but so I know folks, like it's a really like beautiful, and creative, and like, we tap into your imagination, which is like, it's not just like, sometimes I think, I know that as a child, I was a big daydreamer, and like I got in trouble for it a lot. And so like some of us have gotten some programming that our imagination is actually like just some dreamland, and it's actually such a sacred part of our intelligence and our knowing, right? And I really, really believe in that. And so the guided visualization is also one that comes out of my my group course, right? That's called Clear. And it's all about like helping folks like, get courageous and confident, in bringing their own, purpose to the world. So it's a really fun guided visualization. There's like follow-up and a practical aspect, and then a practice that you can really easily weave into every day, even just like as a morning practice, quality, not quantity, to help you like just make space for connecting in with yourself, right? Which is also about that, like learning how to trust yourself.
And how can our audience stay connected with you?
Yeah, I would say that I'm most prolific over on Instagram, right? So my Instagram, I'm sure it'll be somewhere on the screen here, is Dana Blix, DanaBlix. And I don't know, I chose that in like 2012 or something. Dana Blick. So, so I'm most prolific over there. And then I would say like going over to thatclearlife.com. You know, there's another beautiful like guided slow down meditation there. You know, I have lots of like free meditations and trainings, pretty robust things that I'm consistently offering. Plus, there's always like you know, I regularly open my course to folks, and you know, we do a year-long, body of work together, and you know, where the revisit all the stuff around clarity and self-trust and mindset and deep emotional work. So it's all there. So however, folks, you want to just drop by Instagram, say hi, you want to come do some deep work together, like it's all possible.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
Dana, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I so appreciated having this conversation and being able to dive deep into slow down medicine and clarity and trusting ourselves and reimagining what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for hosting this beautiful, you know, these conversations with all these incredible humans. I'm honored to be a part of it. And then thanks also for giving me an extra minute there at the top to like brush my hair and get presentable. I really love this conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you're doing here in the world. Your medicine is needed.
Thank you so much, Dana. I appreciate you.